Hi, my name is Taylor. I am a dog teacher with Happy Dance, and welcome to our June lecture. And the lecture for June is titled Impulse Control Without Conflict. Why impulse control is a nervous system skill, not an obedience problem. When people talk about impulse control in dogs, they almost always talk about obedience. They talk about whether a dog can wait at doors, resist food, ignore distractions, or refrain from moving until released. They describe impulse control as the dog's ability to stop themselves, to inhibit action when asked. From the outside, this looks like a reasonable definition, but from a nervous system perspective, it is deeply incomplete. Impulse control is not the ability to follow a rule. Impulse control is the ability of the nervous system to tolerate activation without tipping into dysregulation. This distinction matters because obedience can exist without impulse control, and impulse control can exist without formal obedience. A dog can remain in a position because they are suppressed, inhibited by pressure, or uncertain about the consequences of movement. That dog may appear controlled, but their nervous system may still be highly activated. Conversely, a dog can move freely, make choices, and still demonstrate impulse control because their nervous system is regulated enough to pause, assess, and choose. When impulse control is treated as obedience, training focuses on stopping the behavior. When impulse control is treated as a nervous system skill, training focuses on increasing capacity. Capacity is the key word. Impulse control is not about whether a dog knows what to do. It is about whether the nervous system can tolerate the feeling of wanting to act without being forced into suppression or explosion. This is why impulse control collapses most often in emotionally charged situations: food, doors, greetings, movement. These contexts are not difficult because the rules are unclear. They're difficult because arousal is high. High arousal narrows the nervous system's window of tolerance. As arousal increases, the ability to pause decreases. This is not defiance. This is physiology. When arousal rises, the body prepares for action. Muscle tone increases and tension narrows. The urge to move becomes strong. If the nervous system does not have sufficient regulatory capacity, that urge tips into impulsive action. This is why dogs who appear well trained still struggle in moments of excitement or frustration. They are not forgetting the rule, they are losing access to regulation. Traditional impulse control training often responds to this by increasing pressure. Dogs are asked to hold still longer, wait harder, resist more intensely, stimulating situations. Errors are corrected. Movement is restricted. Sometimes this works temporarily, but neurologically, this approach often builds conflict rather than control. Pressure increases frustration. Frustration increases arousal. Increased arousal reduces impulse control. This creates a loop where the dog is repeatedly placed in situations that exceed their nervous system's capacity and then corrected for failing to cope. Over time, this does not strengthen impulse control, it weakens it. Dogs begin to associate pauses with pressure, not safety. Waiting becomes emotionally charged. Rules become conflict points. The nervous system learns that restraint is uncomfortable and unpredictable. This is why many dogs who have been heavily drilled on impulse control exercises appear tense around food, doorways, or greetings. They comply, but their compliance is brittle. At Happy Dance, we define impulse control differently. Impulse control is the nervous system's ability to experience activation and remain regulated enough to pause voluntarily. The pause matters. A voluntary pause indicates that the thinking brain is accessible. It indicates that the dog can tolerate arousal without tipping into reflexive action. Forced pauses do not teach this. They teach endurance or avoidance. This is why impulse control must be built, not imposed. It is built through repeated experiences where the dog feels activation, pauses briefly, and experiences relief rather than conflict. Relief is critical here. If pausing reduces pressure and increases safety, the nervous system learns that restraint is tolerable. If pauses increase pressure or frustration, the nervous system learns that restraint is threatening. This learning happens regardless of our intentions. Biology does not care whether we meant to teach patience, it cares about what happened in the body. This is also why frustration is such a powerful disruptor of impulse control. Frustration is not simply an emotion, it is a physiological state marked by heightened arousal without resolution. When a dog wants something and cannot access it, arousal rises. If that arousal is not managed, it spills over into impulse control. Frustration does not teach self-control, it consumes it. This is why long waits, repeated denials, and high-pressure impulse control drills often backfire. They overload the system and then punish the outcome. Real impulse control looks quieter than obedience. It looks like micro pauses, brief hesitations, moments of checking in. These are signs of a nervous system that is learning to regulate, not one that is being held together. In the next movement, we will explore how pauses are actually learned, why release matters more than restraint, and how impulse control develops naturally when the nervous system feels safe enough to slow down. Part 2. How pauses are learned, why release matters more than waiting, and what the nervous system actually practices. If impulse control were simply a matter of knowing the rule, most dogs would already have it. Dogs are excellent at pattern recognition. They quickly learn that the food appears after sitting, that doors open after waiting, that leashes come on after stillness. Knowledge is rarely a limiting factor. What limits impulse control is not understanding, it is tolerance. Impulse control requires the nervous system to hold activation without escalating. This means the body must experience desire, anticipation, or excitement and remain regulated enough to pause before acting. That pause does not come from instruction, it comes from capacity. Capacity is built through experience, specifically through experiences where arousal rises slightly, pauses occur briefly, and then the nervous system is allowed to resolve rather than escalate. This is where most impulse control training goes wrong. Traditional approaches often focus on extending the wait. Dogs are asked to hold positions longer, resist stronger temptations, and endure higher levels of frustration. That assumption is that endurance builds control. Neurologically, endurance under pressure does not build regulation, it builds strain. When a dog is asked to wait beyond their current capacity, arousal continues to rise. Muscle tension increases, breathing becomes shallow, the nervous system enters a braced state. From the outside, the dog may still be holding the position. From the inside, the system is destabilizing. This is why impulse control often fails explosively rather than gradually. The dog does not slowly lose control. They hold it together until the system can no longer contain the activation. Then they surge forward. This surge is not a decision. It is a release of accumulated arousal. The nervous system did not learn to pause, it learned to endure until it couldn't. This is where release becomes more important than waiting. Release is not a reward in the behavioral sense. Release is a nervous system event. A well-timed release teaches the body that activation has an endpoint. It teaches that pausing does not trap the dog in frustration indefinitely. It allows arousal to rise and then fall cleanly. When release is predictable and timely, the nervous system begins to tolerate anticipation without panic. This is the foundation of impulse control. Not longer waits, cleaner cycles. Short pauses followed by relief condition the nervous system far more effectively than long pressured waits. This is why impulse control should be practiced in micro doses. A pause of half of a second that resolves cleanly is neurologically more valuable than a 30-second wait that ends in tension. The nervous system learns through repetition, not heroics. Another critical misunderstanding is the role of frustration. The frustration is often treated as a necessary ingredient in impulse control training. The idea is that dogs must learn to deal with it, but frustration is not neutral. Frustration is a state of unresolved arousal. When frustration rises without resolution, it consumes regulatory resources. The nervous system becomes less capable of pausing, not more. This is why impulse control drills that deliberately provoke frustration often create more conflict around food, doors, and greetings. The dog begins to associate these contexts with internal pressure. Waiting becomes emotionally charged. Anticipation becomes anxiety. This does not produce calm choices. It produces brittle compliance or impulsive failure. Impulse control that holds up in real life looks different. It is quiet. It shows up as a brief hesitation before movement, a moment of checking in, a soft shift of weight rather than a frozen hold. These movements are easy to miss because they are subtle, but neurologically they are significant. A voluntary pause indicates that the nervous system is accessing the thinking brain. It means the dog is choosing, not being restrained. Choice is the marker of regulation. This is why forced pauses do not generalize well. They are context bound. They rely on external pressure. When that pressure changes or disappears, the behavior collapses. Voluntary pauses generalize because they are internally regulated. They travel with the dog. Another important factor is learning pauses is predictability. When dogs know that release will come, the nervous system can tolerate waiting. When release is inconsistent or delayed unpredictably, vigilance increases. This is why randomizing release timing too early in impulse control training often backfires. Variability increases uncertainty. Uncertainty increases arousal. Increased arousal reduces impulse control. Predictability builds safety. Safety builds tolerance. Tolerance builds impulse control. This is not about making life easy for dogs. It is about making learning biologically possible. In the next movement, we will examine how impulse control applies to real-life situations like food, doors, and movement, and why these contexts fail when treated as rule-based problems rather than arousal-based ones. Thank you. That was part 2 of our set of videos. Tune in for the next one.